What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, it's Tuesday, but it's not the 9x9. It's just me. It's just Everett. And if you don't remember OG Volleyball Source Times, you do remember before the 9x9, I did a show called the Volleyball Source Podcast. And, well, I think it's time to bring it back. And who better to get us going than a good friend of mine, someone I hold dear in my heart, and who's getting ready for a very wild ride as she is about to embark on a NCAA tournament run with the Houston Cougars. We're talking about another than my good friend, Caitlin Genovy. Caitlin was the starting setter for the McMaster Marauders for a number of years, was an OUA All-Star, played a little bit professionally in France before starting her coaching career, coached for Team Ontario for a little bit before moving down to the States, and she started first at Indiana State and has been the volunteer assistant coach for the past 2 years at Houston. So, welcome to the show, Caitlin Genovy. Caitlin.
Thank you, Everett.
Welcome. I've already gotten to see a little bit of the insanity that is the NCAA tournament as we signed on to this call, and you were answering emails, making sure that your team had meals and whatnot. First and foremost, great to see you. It's been a while. Love to see that you're happy and healthy, and congratulations on what it seems has been a pretty fun season for your Houston Cougars with the 5th seed going 28-3 this year, 19-1 in conference, co-conference champs. You guys are on a roll this season. Oh, did I lose her right there? Maybe. Oh no. Let's see if we can get her back. That's so funny how it paused just as I was asking her the first question, too. Okay. Well, then. Just give me 2 seconds here to figure this out if you guys are watching it live. Yes, you're back. All right, let's see. Okay, I think we're back.
Okay, cool.
Okay, awesome. Did you catch the question?
I did catch the question. It's been an insanely fun season with Houston. I mean, going on a 20-game win streak is unlike anything else you could ever ask for. The American Conference, for anybody who watches it, is not exactly a walk in the park. Super competitive conference, some really incredible opponents. I mean, we battled back and forth with the University of Central Florida all season for that number 1 spot. It just kind of goes to show with our tail to our automatic qualifier. We split the series with them, but we win by a very small sliver in sets won and lost. So, but really cool opponents this year. Our preseason was a ton of fun. Got to play some really big teams. Got to play Texas, who's currently number 1 in front of their home crowd. And that's unlike anything else I've ever experienced before.
Yeah, I bet. You played at the Burridge, and the Burridge is can get pretty rowdy, but
yeah.
What's playing at Texas like?
Okay, so Texas is typically a pretty young crowd. So Austin is super into their athletics, very big supporters of their teams on campus. So imagine a gym just a little bit bigger than Burridge, sold out pretty much every single night. The band's down on the sideline playing between every point. It's just nonstop loud. And a ton of history in that venue too. So really cool place to have that opportunity to even walk into practice and then not only compete and kind of hold our own against the number 1 team in the country.
You guys took a set off of them at home. That's
we
still
were the first team to take the set off them all season. So
there we go.
That's a pretty fun accomplishment for us.
That's awesome. Well, you know me, I can get distracted a little bit. So let's stay on task and focus a little bit on the tournament just to start. Well, first and foremost, congratulations to your entire coaching staff. Your head coach was named head coach of the year, and I mean, having done some coaching myself, I know that that's always a testament to the entire staff they have around them. So obviously you're a testament to that. So congratulations. Is that something that you guys expected as a coaching staff to be, for him to get Coach of the Year?
Not really. I think after when we went on that 20-game run, we knew that there was a possibility to do it, but there are a lot of really incredible coaches in that league. Todd Dagenet is a legend at UCF. He's another very successful coach. And then this year, SMU got a new head coach who was coming in her first season as a head coach. And SMU, I think they ended up finishing third in conference, which is a really incredible thing to do when you have more than half your roster transfer out. And to come in your first year as a young head coach is really cool. So we knew there was some possibility to it, but we got that notification today while we were in our staff meeting. So it was a pretty fun thing to celebrate as a staff as a whole.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, you guys are coming into the tournament ranked number 5. You guys are going to take on South Dakota in the first round, I believe. Now,
Yep.
This is your second year with the team. As I told you on the onset, my knowledge of NCAA volleyball is far less than it should be. It's a point that I'm ashamed of. So is this, you guys are seeded 5th coming into this tournament here. Just had a fantastic season. Where does that rank for you guys? Is that pretty normal for Houston, or is this a good season for y'all?
This is a really good season for us. Last year with the NCAA tournament, we were part of that first 4 out group. So we were right on the bubble. Most of the placement kind of goes based off RPI. So big fun calculation. Still haven't figured out quite what it does or how it works, but we just missed out last year. So we had a great season last year as well. But this year, I think we kind of proved a point for ourselves. We really had a goal at the beginning of the season to make it to the tournament. So the 5 seed is pretty fun. There was a small chunk of time where there was some possibility that we were actually going to be a host site for one of these, which would have just been a cherry on top. But getting seeded going into our first NCAA tournament since I think it was 1999 is an incredible accomplishment for the program. And it's pretty cool to be part of that little piece of history for Houston volleyball.
Absolutely. This is that goes to show American coaches. You hire Canadians, and this is what happens. You make your first.
Not gonna say there is a correlation, but there is a pretty good correlation.
Hey, as you said to me at the beginning of this show before we started, is you're pretty good at your job, and I think I know you pretty well, and I think you are damn good at your job. But jumping into this, you guys, obviously, as you just said, ranked coming into this tournament, which is fantastic. Consider you guys were on the outside looking in, haven't qualified since 1999. Now, what's next? Looking at the bracket, looking at your team, you have South Dakota in the first round. Is this something that you're kind of looking at down the bracket and seeing who you could match up with, or is it just you're focusing on that first round matchup and that's it?
We are super locked in on South Dakota. They're a very good first round opponent. Somebody had put something out, somebody that's involved with Creighton had put something out that this might be the hardest first and second round location. Our bracket as a total has the highest combined wins and lowest combined losses on this season. So some really incredible opponents. South Dakota is good. They kind of stormed through the Summit League, which is not a league that we're super familiar with. There's some good opponents in that league. And they have one of the best outsides in the country. Number 6, can't remember her last name, but she is, I believe she's number 2 in kills per set in the country. So an incredible athlete who's up there in the national rankings, in good company with McKenna Millville, who is UCF's outside, who I believe is number 1 in the country right now. So not something that we are entirely new to, seeing an outside who's super dominant, but we're excited about this matchup. We obviously, coaches have to prepare, so kind of looking forward a little bit to what could happen. Auburn is a really young team who has had an incredible early winning streak in the SEC. They had a great preseason, a tough end to their season, but they could definitely challenge Creighton. And Creighton has been, a big name in NCAA volleyball for a few years, and really good opponent. They're ranked 4, we're ranked 5. So if we make it to that second round game, which we're planning on doing, it's going to be an incredible match, regardless of what the result is.
You guys have only lost to ranked opponents so far this year. You guys have lost to Rice, that we see on the other side of the bracket, also ranked number 5. UCF, sorry, also ranked number 5, and then of course number 1 Texas. Does that give you guys some confidence coming to this matchup against South Dakota?
I mean, we've been in opportunities to compete against big teams and to compete against successful teams. And South Dakota might not have a national ranking next to their name or to their record, but I mean, they went 29-3 this season, and very similar. They lost 2 games in conference and then 1 game early on in preseason. And they had a really solid preseason schedule. I believe they played Louisville, so they've also seen big opponents too. So I think it's not one of those matchups where you walk into it and you're thinking, hey, this is a gimme. We can walk through this game. This is going to be a tough opponent for us. So we got to make sure we take care of our business on Friday.
Awesome. Sounds good. Hopefully, our friend Peter watches that one, so I can check that one out too. We all know how difficult it is to watch the NCAA sometimes up here in Canada. Of course, what was it? No, it was during the pandemic year, right? Where you and Peter and
Peter and I hopped on the commentary. It was always at Indiana State that we hopped on commentary, and we would just kind of walk through games, and super fun to do that. Now I get to live it courtside, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that was my next question. Like, how much of a dream this is for you? I mean, like once again, as we alluded to, like Genovy and I go like a little back, and I know that you've been like, even when you were a Marauder, you would take trips, and I'm pretty sure in your high school too, you take trips in to watch NCAA games, right? Like, so how much of a dream come true for you is that come Friday you're gonna have coached in an NCAA tournament game?
I mean, it's still crazy. The fact that I coach in the NCAA as a whole, still kind of, I get some pinch me moments a little bit, especially when we get to walk into, venues like Texas, when we play against a sold out crowd at UCF last weekend, and now walking into the NCAA tournament. It was a dream of mine to play NCAA from a really early on in my playing career, but never really found the right fit of program, and found an incredible home at McMaster, but never kind of lost hope of that dream to be in NCAA volleyball. It just looks a little bit different now. So it's, to me, I still have to pinch myself. It's such a cool opportunity, but I know going into this weekend, I'm going to take in every moment that I can, because who knows when I'm going to be back.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? Houston hasn't been there since 1999, as you said, so you got to savor every moment. Now I think is a good time to talk a little bit about the comparisons between U Sports and the NCAA, and I think you might be the best person to talk about that. And as we begin, I don't want to make this a U Sports versus NCAA, because I think that both paths are viable. And I mean, like, we've got like our 2 best stars in the national team. One came from U Sports, the other one came from the NCAA. So it's really open. But I'd love to hear the difference, kind of like your comparisons between the NCAA and U Sports, because it must be quite different.
Yeah, I mean, the size alone, I think, is like the most glaring difference between the two. The Division I level, there's 330 something teams in the NCAA. So then we have how many teams across Canada? I think 50, 60, somewhere around there. So if that at most. That might include the college system as well. So
absolutely, 100%.
So I mean, the size itself is crazy. The travel demands are so much bigger. Rarely are you driving to an opponent. Now, when I was at Indiana State, we drove. It's a little bit closer geographically in the Missouri Valley Conference. But we didn't take a bus trip a single time this year in conference. We're flying everywhere every other weekend. So the travel demands are huge. But in terms of the game, the game truly is bigger, faster, stronger. And I don't quite have a finger on really where that difference is coming from. Obviously, the club system that feeds into these colleges and universities has a huge part of it. But there's some incredible club volleyball that's taking place in Ontario for sure. I follow that one the closest, but across Canada as a whole. So it's totally a different beast. It's so structured. Like the Division I manual has some ridiculous number of pages in it, and there's a rule for pretty much everything. How much you can spend on a student athlete for a trip on the weekend. You know, the number of hours that you're allowed to require student athletes to do things, which I think is probably my favorite rule out of all of them. It's 20 hours a max in season. You can't go beyond that. That includes your game times and all of that. So they do a really good job of taking care of the student athlete to make sure that they really are student first. But I think one of the big things that I miss, and Houston's a much bigger school than McMaster is, but one of the things that I miss is the connection between the academics and athletic world. McMaster might have been just a really special place, but we were super tight-knit with all of the departments, academic departments across campus. So it wasn't uncommon to see your professors at games on the weekends, or to, you know, have a professor shout you out on a Monday and be like, hey, I was at your game, watch the results, you guys played awesome, whatever it was. But everything's just bigger, which is kind of like everything's bigger in Texas, but it's across the U.S. So
it's awesome. Now, you mentioned the level of the game and kind of bigger, faster, stronger. Do you think that's due to, like, I see clips of 12U ball from the States sometimes, and it just, like, blows my mind. Do you think they're just getting to it faster and they're getting better athletes into it quicker?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily better athletes. I think, and I don't necessarily think the training systems or how club seasons are set up down here really make that big of a difference. But I do think that it has something to do with how early kids start. So, I mean, I started when I was 14. That would be considered insanely late now. Anywhere in the United States, if you're starting volleyball at 14, you're super late to the game. But I mean, kids are starting. The club that I've worked with, we have a junior mints program, which starts when kids are like 6, 7 years old. So they get exposed to the game a lot sooner than we do at home. It helps when you have it on TV. It helps when you have many more schools that you can go and watch these things at. But in Canada, I mean, we grew up watching hockey and basketball.
You never see volleyball ever. Yeah.
You never see volleyball on TV. So the exposure piece, I'm sure, has a lot to do with it. But also the high school system. High school athletics down here are insanely competitive. And at least when I was in high school, you don't have an entire high school team built of your top club kids in your area. Texas and Houston happens to be some of the strongest high school volleyball in the country. And you have, you know, an entire high school team that's stacked with some of the best kids in the region. And so now you have kids playing really high level volleyball year round instead of, you know, most club kids that are really good and super serious about what they're doing. A lot of those kids are opting out of playing high school ball in Canada so that they can get
Especially
proper training, or at least, to stay healthy for club seasons, because in Canada, it's kind of crazy, like just how long it is, where you kind of start with tryouts in August and you roll through with nationals, and our nationals still in May.
But that's only Ontario, really, and like Quebec. Like BC, Alberta, Manitoba, Sask, they all do it where they have high school season in the fall. And then like right now is when club tryouts start for all of the other like western provinces. So it's truly just Ontario. I mean, where it is a little insane, especially if you're one of those top girls, having to play your OFSA in the springtime as you're gearing up for provincials, as you're gearing up for nationals, as you have all of your stuff in high school to deal with too, and getting ready for university. There's no surprise whatsoever that so many young women decide to opt out of high school volleyball in Ontario.
It's super interesting to me too. Is I know this has kind of shifted a little bit, but historically the western part of Canada has been so much stronger with volleyball as a whole. I mean, I remember coming into my first year at McMaster. I mean, you couldn't touch anyone from out west.
No.
I know it kind of shifted during my playing career, where Ontario got really strong.
I may have lost her again. It did happen one time before. Let's see if we get her back. She managed to make her way back last time, so we'll give her a few moments here to see if she can pop back in the meantime. I'm assuming her internet connection wherever she is. I mean, she's in America. Like, figure out America. Figure out your internet connection. Oh no, I want to be on this, just ready for when she's back. Oh, well, she's gone now, so that's maybe a good thing. There we go.
Holy
Hey,
man, my internet today.
it's all good. Yeah, no, we're still streaming. We're still live. I'll have to edit this afterwards, but yeah, no, we're good to go. Sorry, we were talking about. Uh, oh, sorry.
High school and just the
Yeah,
difference.
and how strong the West is compared to Ontario.
Yeah, I think the split seasons definitely help a lot. And I mean, it's so much to have two seasons going on at once. It gets way overwhelming.
Well, I remember like this, and this is like over a decade ago now. I'm aging myself a little bit here. I'm not as young as you over there, Genovy. But like I remember in my grade, either grade 11 or grade 12 year, I think it was grade 11, or no, what doesn't really matter, but falling asleep during a test because we were training like 4 times a week for school ball plus games because we wanted to go to OFSA, which we didn't. And then like my club like season was getting going right away, and you were just so exhausted for that first bit of the year. Like it just makes so much sense. Is there much more of an emphasis on high school ball in the States? Like, do you play club in high school, or is there that definitive season like we see in the Western provinces?
Yeah, it's super split. So we have, and obviously every region is a little bit different, but in the Lone Star region, there is actually legislation in place where you cannot um, attend club practices or compete for a club team while your high school season is still going on. So, like, our club season started 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago with practices, and any athletes that were still competing at the state level were not permitted to attend practices. And so, we have just been super low key with the club scene. It's a lot of like low impact stuff right now. But there's a very clear difference between kind of when it's high school time and club time.
Fair enough. Like high school, it seems is almost like a higher level in some regards.
It's some teams, yeah, depending on what club team you compete for, your high school team might be better than your club team.
Crazy, crazy. That's like would be unheard of here in Canada. Now you have mentioned
Yeah.
that you're pretty good. You're associated with the club. You work with a club. You're pretty well taken care of. How different is club volleyball in the States, in Texas, where it's absolutely massive, to compared to up here in Canada?
It's interesting because my club experience when I was in Ontario, I thought we had more training hours per week than what my team does right now.
Really?
Right now, we're twice a week for 2 hours on court for skill instruction, and then they have a half hour of like sport conditioning and a half hour of position only clinics. But um, we compete a lot more. Um,
Mm,
because Texas is what Texas is, and Houston's a humongous city. I mean, we compete almost every weekend in once we hit club season in January, where we'll have our qualifiers to compete for a national qualifying bid. Um, we'll have, I think we have four or five of them this year. You have invite only tournaments like Triple Crown, where only the best teams and the best clubs get invited to. But then you have your Houston, like we have a Houston Power League that will compete in. We have the Tour of Texas that will compete in, where we'll go and compete just within the state. And it's, once or twice a month where we're going to these tournaments, kind of amongst the qualifying tournaments too. So just a lot more competition, I think, is the big thing that stands out.
do you think that's something that's lacking in like specifically the Ontario system? Like that's something I've thought, and I think we've thought about a lot of how stale the Ontario system gets. And you end up playing just the same people from 15U to 14U all the way through 18U, and it's just the same. There's all the drama of who's going where, and I guess that's fun. But you're like even just within the state, like that's a normal season for Ontario teams, and you guys seems like you're traveling
Yeah.
around and competing much more.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely like as an athlete, it always kind of sucked when you were like, oh, I have to wait another 3 weeks until I get to play in a tournament again. Um, but if we think about like from a learning standpoint, game teaches the game, and I know that this has been a pretty big emphasis with Volleyball Canada's coaching certificate program. And you can only get so much out of scrimmaging and practice again amongst the teams within your club, within your own team. That if you don't expose your athletes to as many different stimuli, so different teams, different athletes, different environments, you kind of just cap out on the learning opportunities. And so it'd be really cool to see if we could get a little bit more between province. I believe it's Ontario and Quebec that they have that challenge tournament, but it's like a one and done type thing. But I mean, Canada's humongous, so it makes travel
It's a lot,
pretty
lot more
difficult.
difficult.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and the logistics of it are a lot more difficult too. Like we have, if you want to go, I guess in Ontario it's a little bit different because everything's so close. But I mean, even the difference between competing in Edmonton and competing in Calgary is several hours. And I mean, you get to go from Hamilton to Burlington. Maybe you have to go to Mississauga or Toronto. The big trips, the one out to Ottawa. Those kinds of travel demands are
You damn GTA
a
kids
little bit different.
who whine about the one trip every few years having to go to Ottawa. Man, in my entire club year, I didn't once have one tournament in Ottawa. I was in a hotel twice. In all of my years, twice I got to not stay in a hotel, and I still had to drive to Kingston in the morning. You GTA kids were so damn spoiled. And then the one time they come to Ottawa, everyone's moaning and whining. When I was coaching club here in Toronto, like we had to go to Ottawa like once or twice, and the parents were insufferable about it. They're like, "Oh yeah, our next tournament's in Ottawa," and the parents like, "Okay, well we just won't go." I was like, "Guys, we played 3 teams from Ottawa in our last tournament. Like what? Why?"
I can't imagine. I can't imagine if they're like, hey, we got a tournament in Montreal this weekend. Whereas like parents down here are just like, so for example, our first club qualifying tournament is in Minneapolis. It's the Northern Lights qualifier. We are going from Houston, Texas. No one's blinking an eye at it. So, and they're like, all right, cool, let's do it. Like, let's go get our qualifying bid in Minnesota. So I think it just gets conditioned totally differently where, I mean, kids are excited to do these big trips and these big tournaments.
Well, of course. But like, man, the cost that must be involved in this at this level must be absolutely insane. Now, when you played club, did you go down to the States and play quite a bit?
We played a little bit. We would go down and compete at the Beast of the East tournament in Pittsburgh. And that was kind of like our big trip. We did one year where we went to Penn State and competed in the big tournament that they host there.
Yeah, I did the Penn State
and then a couple times we were down to Rochester. So not as much as what some of the teams are starting to do now. I know Defensa historically has been pretty big on the U.S. Club tournaments. Halton has been in the last several years. I think the teams that are seeking out better competition are going to have to go south because the game is different, even at the youth level. I'm working with a 17U team this year, and my 13s last year. My 13U team last year that I had, we were in the 3rd or 4th division of U.S. Nationals, and even watching the game at that level was beyond what I remember 13U volleyball looking like in Ontario. So if you're a top 13s team in Canada and you're like, hey, you know what? Like, let's go and compete with some really good teams. You go south and you will very easily get your butt kicked by just a program that's been running for so much longer.
I know that there's always such a big conversation of, like keeping players within Canada or like keeping our talent within Canada. And I know that you brought up Defensa, and I remember it was a few years ago now, but I remember one year his team had played no OVA tournaments whatsoever and had only played in the States, and then they played Quebec provincials to qualify for nationals, and that's it. And everyone was up in arms for it. But
yeah, that was I remember that was actually while I was playing club. I do remember that. But I mean, there's something to be said for playing in Canada, right? Like I
100%.
had opportunities to play in the South and I chose not to. I really prioritized my academics, and you can definitely do that down here. There are some incredible schools academically. But I was in a I'm not going to say niche, but I was in a really tough program that set me up to do a lot of really great things because I chose to stay at home. Now, I could have gone to do a similar program in the U.S. and maybe not gotten the same thing out of it, but I mean, there's a fit for everyone. If you want to go and play in the NCAA as a Canadian athlete, you can find somewhere to do it. You don't have to do the big ticket names if that's a priority. If you really need the financial assistance to go and play, there are opportunities for you to play down here. Well, I know the scholarship situation in Canada as a whole is significantly different than what it is in the U.S.
Yeah, 100%. Like you can get your education paid for by going down to the States and playing there, and it's I mean, personally, I don't have any issues with it, especially at the club level. At the club level, if you have an elite team, like if you're a team that's looking at nationals, like not even D1 T1, like if you're like D1 T4, like you should be playing on many tournaments in the States, like getting that exposure. Like they're the Olympic champions, they make it to the finals of tournaments, they're a top 4 like country, like we're getting there. Like we definitely, I think we definitely need to talk about like the success of the Canadian women's team over the past couple of years, and it's been absolutely fantastic. But I do think that's partly because of the amount of exposure we are giving some of our young girls at even younger ages now. Like exposure to the level of ball that we see in the States, because it's unreal. I honestly, I just want to come to a club tournament, an American club tournament, and just walk around and watch, because I feel like it's almost a completely different vibe.
It is so cool. And depending on where you end up, like, I mean, I've never been to the Northern Lights qualifier. I had the opportunity to go to Triple Crown last year. Triple Crown is that invite-only tournament. And that itself is insane. That's the highest level of volleyball at every age group being played in one building. It's really, really cool.
Where is this at? I might have to get myself an invite.
Kansas City.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll have to look into that. It sounds nuts. Like that's crazy. It almost seems like a completely different world. Like American club volleyball and American and NCAA compared to what we have here in Canada.
It definitely feels like it. And I mean, for me, I'm speaking from a student athlete standpoint on the Canada experience and a coach perspective on the NCAA. So obviously 2 very different experiences, but it really does feel like a different beast. Like, I think if I was in the academic program that I was in with the schedule that I coach now, I don't know how anybody does it. Like, if you are trying to go high academic, we have a couple kids on our team that are in engineering programs, and the fact that they are passing all of their classes with really good GPAs is absolutely incredible to me, because, I mean, my program was hard for all 5 years that I was there, and we had a much easier travel schedule, which allowed me to do a little bit more academically, but holy man, they are so different.
I mean, yeah, that one trip to Thunder Bay to go play Lakehead isn't as much as jumping on a flight every weekend. Every other weekend. Do you like was coaching always? I feel like coaching was always kind of your goal, right? Was always kind of like where you knew you'd be, like what you wanted, because you played your 1 year pro in France, and then you came back, you jumped in right with the Halton Hurricanes. Like for those not from Canada, is widely regarded as one of the best clubs in Canada. Definitely one of the best clubs in Ontario and thus in Canada, and has produced some fantastic athletes and continues to do so. Then you worked with Team Ontario a little bit before going to Indiana State. Like, it seemed like you were very much like, I know what I want to do. I know how I want to go about it.
So both yes and no. Kind of my coaching journey is pretty funny. I actually started coaching at 14s. So mountain volleyball was very, we host one of the, the MVC. Old MAC, which is now MVC.
MVC, you're right. Yeah, MVC is now MVC, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, my coach was very big on making sure that we were involved in the club and setting good examples for younger athletes. So we started off coaching the House League program when we ourselves were 14U. So we got started with that pretty early. By the time I was 16, I had
more clubs cool. need to employ that model. You get your older kids to coach the younger kids. Like, just it's the best model. Really Sorry for interrupting you, but
No, that's okay. But by the time I was 16, because of the involvement with the house league program, my coach Joss Netterveen, who's very big into coach development, he actually helped me get my level 1 certification. So, which is now, I can't remember what they changed the name to, beginner or fundamentals, something, whatever Volleyball Canada calls it now. So I had that by the time I was 16. So it kind of looked like I was always heading that way, but I went to McMaster with goals of being a physiotherapist. So I actually took a bunch of classes, worked in the physio clinic at Mac a couple days a week as a volunteer, and very quickly learned that it wasn't an athletic enough population for me. So then I started looking at athletic training routes. And somewhere around my 4th year, I panicked because getting an athletic training job in Canada that is sustainable, especially as a female AT, is incredibly difficult. There's so few of them. It would have required me to go to Sheridan College for 2 to 4 more years of school to get certified to do that. And so panicked a little bit, applied to a physician assistant studies program at McMaster. Got waitlisted in that program, and by the time I was in my 5th year, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go to Europe and we'll figure it out after. And at some point, my time in France was, oh damn, I actually think I want to try and make this coaching thing a career.
Damn, and now here you are, coaching at the NCAA tournament, or about to coach at the NCAA tournament. Uh-oh. Oh no. Lost her again, looks like. Let's see how quickly we can get her back this time. Probably might be the last time we try it. We'll see. Just want to go over, when we get her back, might just get her to go over the bracket real quick, just to check things out. I know, eh? Aussie Tragic, you're just along for the ride here, eh? You're just gonna stay on board until we jump into the 9x9 in about 45 minutes. It's gonna be a good 9x9. There's a lot to talk about right now. Of course, the tournament starting up, Champions League today. Oh, there we go. She's back.
This is just comical at this point.
Well, I've started like almost like a second show now in between when you've gone offline.
I swear, I'm supposed to have the best internet in the US right now with fiber, and this is just letting me down.
Yeah, it is. Come on, you guys need to get Beanfield on there. The worst is that like when I'm not changing anything, so when you go, it's just me talking to me, like on a slight delay. Luckily, there's just one audio format. But yes, Audrey Tragic. The 9x9 is on at 7:30 as always. 7:30 at 7:30 on Tuesdays. Check out the 9x9. Quick little plug for my next show. But yes, sorry, we were talking about your kind of path into coaching. So you just kind of, it was something that you just kind of like, obviously you've been doing it for a long time, but it wasn't like, this is the plan coming out of school. Like, I want to be a volleyball coach. And now that's kind of like, it seems like that's what you're doing, right? Like that's what your
Yep.
full-time gig is.
Yeah, Tim used to pester me in school when I was going through this, like, oh, I think I want to do this. I think I want to do this, and like changing these career paths. He's like, you know what? I think you should just be a teacher. And I was like, there is no way I will teach. That was one thing I knew for sure. I was not going to be a teacher. But somewhere down the road, I was like, damn, I guess coach is kind of the same thing as a teacher. So he saw something.
Just like it's a little bit more fun though. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah, way more fun. Way more fun.
Like just being around the game. I do miss coaching. I think I might get back. I might get back to it a little bit, just to just to get back into things. Now, is there any plan? Like is your goal to coach in the NCAA now? Is that the goal?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the natural progression of what I've been doing. So 2 years as a graduate assistant while I completed my master's degree at Indiana State, into 2 years as a volunteer. The next move, and the hiring cycle starts way sooner than I'd like it to, but starting to find a full-time role somewhere, and see what I can do as a full-time assistant coach, and just kind of start getting in that way. And at some point down the road, there are aspirations to be a head coach. whether that is NCAA or Canada. If the right opportunity opened up, I am honestly super open to both. I think as a head coach, spending the amount of time that I spent in the NCAA, I think it would serve me incredibly well in Canada to just see an entirely different beast. And so we'll see what happens. That's like maybe in the next 5 to 10 years that we'll start making some head coach stabs, but I'm pretty much loving this assistant coach gig in the NCAA. It's incredible.
Yeah, hey man, if you can run with it, why not, right? You're still young, you still got that time, and absolutely, it's the best feeder league in the world. There's no doubt about it, and I don't think anyone can argue about that. How much this is going to be, you'll understand, but how much did Madawaska have an effect on you wanting to coach? Because like especially like it's probably been a few years since you've been back. It's been a few years since I've been back, unfortunately. But I know, especially like toward our end at the time, like there was such an emphasis on coaching development while we were there. Like, so how much did our favorite place on the earth affect your wanting to coach?
I think it was. I mean, it had to have been huge. I think when as an athlete at camp, when you have these people that just show you how much they love what they're doing day in and day out, waking up at 6 a.m., freezing your butt off in the morning, and then dripping in sweat by the time it's noon. Just having those role models,
Coaching
it does kind of
6 hours a day.
6 hours a day out in the sun nonstop. I think it just kind of, it had to have been subconsciously just kind of like settled in my brain. And I started the CIT program a year earlier than most people did.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah. I remember that drama.
I started a year earlier. I did not go out with a bang in graduating top cabin group, but I think having those people around, and now when I was there, having Dustin Reed involved with the coach development side of things, just kind of plants a seed. And obviously had some really incredible mentors when I was working with Halton Hurricanes, and Gabby Jopes pushing me to look at getting my level 3 technical development
Do you have your level
certification. 3? I do not. I have all the coursework done, but I just have never really done the portfolio part to it. So I started it, and I honestly probably will never finish it. So it's a lot to do. It's a huge financial commitment. And I think if it was a job requirement somewhere down the road, then it would be something that I would actually seriously look at. But right now, kind of cruising the NCAA and club system, you don't necessarily need to have the same level of certification that you do at home. So.
All right. Fair enough. It's kind of weird. Interesting because, like the certification, like I only have like my level 1 and like never finished my level 2, and I'd get dinged every year at provincials for it. And I was just like, kind of like, I'm out here coaching so many teams, and I was like coaching like over 40 hours a week. It's like, but you're not a certified coach. And it was kind of like at a certain point I was like, okay, but the next time I was like this is a little extreme. So
I think I would probably try, like, most of the reason I never bothered with my level 2 is because all of my academic courses that I was at McMaster were the exact same content, and I was like, why am I going to pay for another round of the same stuff?
Yeah.
So I think I'd probably try and fight my way through that one and be like, look at all this learning I've already done through 2 degrees.
Yeah, I think you have a case for yourself. I don't know if I actually did. I was just being, a little whiny. All right, Caitlin, before we let you go, because I know you've got a lot to do to get ready for this tournament, I want to jump back to the bracket real quick. I want to go through it a little bit with you and kind of jump into what we're looking at here. Wait, make sure we got the proper. Okay, we're gonna start at the top here. We're looking at the Texas zonal stuff. Texas has got Farley Dickinson in the first round. I mean, FDU, congrats on making the tournament, but it's going to be a 3-donger in my opinion. I don't really know anything about you, but you're up against Texas, and I know that's pretty damn good right now. Actually, you guys would know perfectly.
Texas is a huge offensive threat. So that's going to be an insanely tough match for FDU coming out of a far less competitive league than the Big 12. So going to be a tough match. I'm sure there's going to be some major size differences between the two teams. So, I mean, I wish them all the best. I hope they put up the best fight that they can put up, but I think Texas is definitely going to take that one home.
All right, fair enough. And just in the bracket, in their bracket, an interesting one for if you're a Canadian fan, you might be interested in one. Tom Black's Georgia taking on Towson from under 8. Have you seen Georgia at all? Like, are they good? What's your prediction on that one?
I've watched a little bit of Georgia. We try and watch a lot of the SEC and the Big 12 as we get ready, as Houston as a whole gets ready to move into a Power 5 conference next year. But Georgia is super disciplined within their system. I'm not super familiar with their athletes. I do know that Towson is an incredibly tough opponent coming out of the CAA. They typically dominate that league and schedule a very tough preseason schedule. And I mean, Towson's got the 8 rank there. So I think that's going to be a really interesting match that really could go either way. But I'm going to give Towson that one there.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we're not going to go through every matchup. I just kind of wanted to highlight that one.
Yeah.
What's your overall thought here? Let's look at the Texas kind of regional first. Texas is going to be making that that final match to come out. Who are they going to be playing out of this regional? Are we looking at like Marquette, Georgia Tech, maybe Towson, or one of the unranked teams?
I mean, this is going to be a really tough regional. You have a lot of really solid programs there. So Texas, I'm assuming, goes all the way through to the end. I mean, you have an incredible competitor in Minnesota there who has had incredible offensive production this year in the Big Ten. And they see big opponents year round. So I think that could be a really interesting matchup in that regional final.
Yeah, for sure. Man, you got so many good teams on this side of the bracket. Ohio State, USC, Florida State, Minnesota. Just absolutely.
There's going to be some sad teams out of this.
Who's your dark horse on this over here on this side of the bracket?
I don't know. I would not be surprised if Georgia Tech tried to make another run.
Tech, okay.
They have Bergman out on the outside, who is just an absolute monster on that pin, and tons of fun. They've got a little bit of Brazilian flair to their team, so super feisty. So I could see them fighting their way through and trying to make a push to compete against, Texas. Or I guess they'll end up against Texas, but trying to make a push to play the other half of the bracket with Minnesota or Ohio State.
Damn. Okay. Georgia Tech. I mean, we did get robbed of seeing Julia Bergman a little bit for Brazil at the World Championships this summer. It looked like she was going to slot in there, but she had to go back to Georgia Tech. So, let's see if that works for her. All right, let's look at the other side of the bracket now. Got Wisconsin up there at number 1, Pittsburgh down there at number 2. Wisconsin, the Badgers, the defending champs, do they have what it takes to repeat?
I think they do this year. They are running a 6-2 this year, which means they have more offensive weapons than they've ever had in the past. So you've got 3 attackers out of the front row full time. I do think they're going to get a really good challenge out of Pitt. Pitt's just not the same Pitt as last year. They're missing some big pieces. They're missing Nday. They're missing Kayla Lund. I think Alexis Akeo is done too. So they're missing some big rock pieces there. They've had an incredible year. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Iowa State making a pretty big run. They had a huge statement win against Texas not that long ago. So it could be interesting to see if the Cyclones could make a push and really give Wisconsin a challenge out of that bracket.
Yeah, for sure. Iowa State, you'd pick them maybe over Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I honestly, having watched Iowa State, I think that they have this underdog mentality that's going to do them a ton of good going into this bracket. They have a really tough side there where they're going to have to try and get through Florida, who's historically been a very good program. But, I mean, when you take down the number 1 team in the country, you show that you have some game to you. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do against big opponents every single weekend instead of just a one-off match.
All right, Iowa State taking on FGCU in the first round, and then Florida A&M. If anything, that should be a bit of a spicy matchup, just a bit of a floor of a matchup there. But I think Florida should take it nice and easy.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know too much about Florida A&M, but I do know that Florida is a force to be reckoned with.
All right, now looking a little bit higher up into the bracket, you've got your friendly foes there of UCF with a potential second round matchup against Penn State. It's the 4-5. What should we expect out of that one?
I think that's going to be an absolute battle of a match. Penn State has had a year much better than what I think most people have predicted, but I mean UCF is a really really good opponent. They have improved on the service or on the reception side of things and defensive side of things from the first time we saw them. And they've become more of a complete team with more offensive weapons than just McKenna Melville. So it'll be fun to see what that matchup looks like. I think that's going to be an absolute brutal 5-setter.
Okay, who are you picking though? UCF over Penn State or Penn State over UCF? Are you going with the American Conference? Or are you going to go with the Big Ten?
I think I'm going to go with the Big Ten on this one, just because Penn State gets to see big opponents all the time, where UCF we get 2 matches a season. So,
yeah, a little bit more difficult for you guys on that one. All right, let's jump down now to the bottom half of the bracket. Of course, your Houston Cougars are going to be found on the left-hand side over there. 3 up from the bottom, taking on South Dakota. But let's start at the top. We got San Diego at the 2, Stanford at the bottom at the 1. San Diego making a nice little push there.
Yeah, San Diego has had an incredible year, and the West Coast Conference has got some good opponents to it, but it's another one where you have a couple teams and you're very top-heavy, where your best teams are really good and the rest of the pack isn't so close. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like when San Diego probably ends up playing Washington State in that next round and then potentially crossing over to play Kentucky. So it'll be that'll be a big match. That'll be a big, interesting side of the bracket there.
Does San Diego still have that Halton girl?
No, Laura graduated last year. So
Laura Medill. Where's she at these days? She's still playing?
I think she's still in San Diego. I'm not sure if she's doing more school, but it looks like she's still out on the West Coast.
Oh, okay. Damn. Would have liked to see her kind of continue playing. I loved her hands when she played for Halton. All right, but looking at the rest of this black bracket, as you said, you've got Kentucky. That one might be another good matchup. We're expecting to see those two kind of come out to take on maybe you guys or Stanford.
I mean, we would love that. We would definitely love, if we're going to end our season, I'd way rather end our season in Palo Alto than Omaha, Nebraska. So nothing on Omaha, but the warm weather sounds a lot nicer right now. And I think if we're going to keep having a historical year, why not? Why not make a run for Sweet 16?
Is that where it's being hosted in first round for you guys? Is that Creighton?
Yeah, we're at Creighton University for that first one. So Creighton's the hosting team for our first and second round.
Man, that Creighton's in Omaha as well. That
Yep.
whole like Nebraska area, like they've got some schools up there, eh?
They sure do. Volleyball is a huge thing for the state of Nebraska as a whole. I mean, Nebraska's sold out records are just absolutely insane. I think that just speaks to how much that state loves the sport of volleyball.
Fair enough. I definitely need to go to a game there. It's just like it looks like it looks unreal. Oh no. Did we just lose you again? Oh no. That's crappy. We've got like half of the bracket, like not even half the bracket left to go now. So we'll hopefully have her come back in a second. Oh, we're about to lose her. Oh, no, never mind. That's just me playing with my computers. Oh, internet, man. It just kills us. Nathaniel Dykstra, only 2 clubs, boys clubs in what area? So, or Nebraska. Man, that's another. I'd love to talk about boys volleyball in the States because it seems just like half of the states don't even offer high school volleyball. Oh, hey, we're back. See, I'm just having other conversations.
Hey, we're back. It's just getting more and more unstable. So let's just crank this bad boy out.
Yeah, let's just finish this up. We were talking about the good teams up in Omaha, but still Stanford up at number 1. Are we expecting Stanford to get out of this group, or maybe a Creighton or a Kentucky kind of come in, or a San Diego kind of upset them, or maybe a Houston perhaps?
I mean, I'm all for a Houston upset, and that would be an upset, all right. But I don't know. Stanford has had a really good year. They came out on the top of Pac-12 again after having not as good of a season as we've seen in previous years when Catherine Plummer was there. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that matchup in the next round against Hawaii goes. Hawaii traditionally a very strong, very competitive program with a lot of fighting spirit to it. But coming out of that other side of the bracket, I mean, they're going to have to take on either Creighton or us. I mean, we want to take Creighton in that second round match and really kind of prove a point this year. So could be fun. I'll take a Stanford matchup. That sounds like good times to me.
Hey, nice little matchup in Palo Alto. Getting to play it at Texas, at Stanford in 1 year. Like that's pretty legendary. That would be pretty legendary.
It would be pretty cool.
All right, and now moving over to the other side of the bracket as we finish things up before your internet cuts out on us. Once again, you've got Nebraska sitting up there at the number 2, Louisville getting the number 1 seed. Got to give a shout out to my boy Rob St. Clair, his Purdue Boilermakers at number 8. But and a lot of quality teams on this side of the bracket as well here, Caitlin.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's a couple of big first round matchups here. Tennessee capable of performing. Purdue kind of on a slide year a little bit with Caitlin Newton having graduated after last season. Obviously still an incredibly good program, but very young. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I think Rice has a particularly tough matchup against Colorado, who has had a very good year, knocking off some of the top ranked teams in the Pac-12 there. So that'll be an interesting one to see how that goes. And then up on the top half, you've got Kansas and Miami. And Kansas has had a pretty good year as well. I'm not as familiar with Miami, but they do have a rank, so that's pretty good. And then Oregon, the Oregon Ducks taking on LMU. So a little bit of a West Coast battle on that one there. So some good matchups on this side for sure. But I would expect to see Louisville make it through into the regionals for sure. And out of that top half of the bracket, I would expect Nebraska to make it through, and probably Oregon, given a pretty good fight on that one too.
Okay, there you go. Is there one team in the tournament that maybe we should watch out that's not one of the usual suspects? Like the Nebraskas, like let's be honest, it's going to be like the Nebraskas, the Texas, the Stanfords, the Wisconsins, those teams. Does Louisville have a real shot in there amongst the big powerhouses? I know they're no slouches themselves, but they don't necessarily punch at the weight at those other big time programs.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure I'm a big Louisville fan. I love watching them play. Really big fan of what they're doing up there. I think they have another shot of making a run. I mean, last year they made a run to the Final Four and put on an absolute show for everyone. And I think they have a lot of similar pieces. They have some incredibly athletic setters involved in that program. And so, I mean, the Midwest is known as a ball control, the home of ball control for the most part, with programs like Kiva and Munciana coming out of the Midwest. But I think Louisville has a real shot this year to make some noise again and kind of make it through into the Elite Eight and Final Four again. So could be fun.
Awesome. Great. Who's your pick? Other than Houston.
Houston.
Who's your pick? Who are we going for here?
For the national championship?
Absolutely. Okay, let's give us your Final Four and then give us the national championship.
Okay. I think Texas makes it through the Final Four. They're just on another level this year. Texas, Wisconsin. I'm going to go Louisville. And then out of our half of the bracket, if it's not going to be us, I would love to see Kentucky make another run.
Oh, okay. So you went for the 3 number ones and then threw Kentucky in there. I like that. If you were gonna give me 4 number ones, I was gonna question you a little bit there, Genovy. But
no.
you saved yourself. You saved yourself with the Kentucky pick at the end. I like that one. Before we get going, is there any Canadian girls that we should watch out for in the tournament?
Ooh, that's actually a really good question. Let's see if I can pull them off the top of my head here. There is a Canadian at Washington. I believe it's Emily Bush.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry if I butchered your name.
Yeah, Emily. Yes, you're right. You're correct. I remember that.
we've got Anna Schreck at Wisconsin. So looking out
classic.
for Anna Schreck to make another run with Wisconsin again this year.
Is she
And
like
then
level with me here? Like, how good is Anna Schreck? Like, I used to watch her when she played for Defensa, but that's like getting to watch her when she's with Wisconsin just seems to be another level. Like,
I haven't watched a ton this year, but last year watching her at the national semifinals and finals, she was incredible.
well, she was the MVP
in the semis,
right? Like, she was the MVP.
She was
the finals MVP.
so good. Now, I believe they moved her to the right, so I haven't seen her on the right side yet, but I think that's an incredible move given her height and just the presence of some of those outsides in the Big Ten. But other Canadians, there's a whole bunch of them on Bowling Green. I believe there's 4 or 5 Canadian kids on Bowling Green. So we've got the Labe sisters, Jessica Andrews and Lauren Hovey. I believe Hovey was named the Mid-American Conference Player of the Year and Freshman of the Year.
I did see that.
Pretty cool. Had the opportunity to coach her with Team Ontario along with Jess. So that will be a ton of fun to see how they do. Then there's a kid at High Point, Anna Wilson. She is there with her High Point Panthers, so expect to see her and her team making some noise. But I think off the top of my head, I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2 kids at some of these smaller schools, but I don't have it off the top of my brain right now.
Anna Schreck is obviously like to me, when I look at what our national team is doing right now and the incredible that they've had the past couple of years, and all the growth that we've seen with the women's national team, when you slot in someone like a potential superstar like Anna Schreck into what you've got going on with Alexa and Kira and everything else, that's really excited for me. I don't think there's ever been a moment ever like this where I've been way more excited about the future of women's volleyball in Canada than I have been about the future of men's volleyball in Canada, because I mean we don't need to get into it, but one of the reasons that I am excited for women's volleyball in Canada is fantastic young coaches for like yourself. I mean, I've talked about it before. In Canada, there's a huge youth movement, and there's even more so of a youth movement amongst like good young female coaches. Like Melissa Bartlett at Western started that, and there's a whole bunch of them coming up underneath, and I definitely count you amongst those. So, Caitlin, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. If your coaching career doesn't work out, let me know, and I'm sure you can find you here of home at Volleyball Source as kind of our NCAA person, because you just kind of blew my mind a little bit how much you know. We might have to get you to come back if you want to, and if you'll allow it, once your run is talk a little bit about your run, and then you can help me break down the tournament, because you clearly know way more about women's volleyball in the NCAA than I do, and it's awesome to learn from you. So, Caitlin, first and foremost, it's great to see you. Great to see that you're doing well. I love the success you're having. So proud of you. And thank you so much for coming on and talking a little bit about the NCAA today. I loved it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. It's been a ton of fun.
Awesome. Well, Caitlin, I'm being serious. Once you're done, I'm gonna get in contact, and I want you out. Maybe we do a few fun little episodes, because as I said, I'm a little embarrassed about how little NCAA stuff we do, given the fact that I do think it is like the best women's volleyball league in the world. It's one of the best products we have, and I'd like to double that on that more, and I'd love to have you help me with that. So, once again, Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this live right now, just stay tuned for about 19 minutes. The 9x9 will be live shortly. Caitlin, once again, thank you so much. Can't thank you enough. Best of luck this weekend. Beat the crap out of South Dakota and go on a nice little run. You deserve it.
Cool. Thanks, Everett.